Welcome to this devlog about our camera work in our game Connection. I want to show you guys what we did with our camera work. We have two camera modes. One is fixed cameras, which if you know anything about fixed cameras, these are the classic survival horror cameras that you will see in Resident Evil, the classics. If you take a look, when the player moves around, the camera switches to a different angle. The player still controls the player from a fixed point. So anytime you press forward, he goes forward physically in the world. So the controls are a little bit harder than modern day video games. But a lot of people love this mode, and including me. This was what I pushed for when we started making this game. The first thing I wanted to do was have fixed cameras. So this is the mode we worked on first. And as you can see, the cameras actually move around, so they have some cinematic movement. We took a lot of inspiration from films and movies. The camera's moving on its own as you just sit here in the scene, which gives it a little bit of life and a little bit of cool movie-like magic, I guess. So let me move around the scene and show you kind of the angles that we did on this part, so you can see the camera moving on its own, kind of on a dolly. If I move around, some cameras, they follow you, they look at you. Like this one right here is looking at me as I move through the scene. This camera right here, you can see it slowly pans. And if I go like into the camera again, it'll do the reverse of what it did the first time if it ended up at the end of its track, of its movement track. If I go back to this one, it's moving backwards, and then if it reaches its final destination going backwards, if I go back into it, see, now it stopped at the final destination. And now if I go into this one, then I go back into this one, it'll start reversing itself going the other way. So we had to do a little bit of coding to determine that the camera was at the right point and when to switch it back the other way. Now if I go, like, we do some inspections on this truck, see, the camera also moves on the truck, so it's not just a fixed point. Although some cameras are just fixed, they don't move at all, even slightly. And another cool thing we did with camera transitions is if you, let's say I go down the ladder here, it'll go into another scene and it goes through the floor down into the other scene physically. So we thought that was pretty cool inspiration we took from films. And if I go back up the ladder, and now it will go in reverse. And there you have it. That's how we have our fixed cameras. Now I want to show you the over-the-shoulder camera mode. If I go into the settings, and I go to camera, I go to over-the-shoulder, hit apply. Now we're back. We're into a modern playstyle. My brother really loved this modern playstyle, so you can kind of have the best of both worlds. Here you can choose whatever mode you want to play with. I personally love fixed cameras. My brother loves the over-the-shoulder, so I'm sure we'll both be playing the game in different ways. But it still has some camera transitions as you go through the scenes. The cameras go down towards the scene where you're going. So there you go. And now I want to show you some of the ways it looks in the edit window. If I go back to fixed cameras, and now I go to our editing screen, I will click on some of these camera trigger boxes. So for example, this green box that just appeared, this is a camera trigger zone. Once the player hits it, it switches to the camera within that camera zone. And you can see here the dolly track that this camera sits on. So the camera moves from one side of the dolly to the next side. It's this green track right here that you see. And if I choose the next camera zone, so here's the first one that he's inside right now. And if I choose the next one, you can see there's another box right there. So when the player hits that box, that's when the camera switches. And we had to do a bit of coding to make it support multiple triggers for the same camera. So in case you're down a hallway where there's a turn, you know, or like it turns an L shape or something, then you'd have to have multiple camera colliders for the same camera. And then we also had to support different camera zones colliding with each other. So like in this case, you can see two camera boxes are separated by a space, and that's relatively easy to do. But when you have them overlapping each other, and you exit one and then you enter the other one, or you exit from one that was multi-collider into a single collider, it gets kind of tricky. So we had to do some coding to get that worked out and get all the bugs fixed on that. We had to keep camera history with the player, where he went, which one he was in first, which one he went into next, how many colliders he's entered and exited from the same camera trigger zone. So, but in the end, it worked out really good, and we're very excited. We think that the camera work for the game is very fun to play with and very polished, and it works out really well. So we hope you enjoyed this vlog about our camera work. Hopefully there'll be more devlogs to come. If you can follow us on Twitter at DragonLevel1. You can also follow us in our Discord channel. We'll have the link below in the description. We look forward to seeing you coming alongside and seeing how we develop this game. Thank you very much.